Greetings everybody, this is Anthony from rawmodel.com and Blackbird Naturals, here with Daniel Vitalis. We did a video at the Grand Canyon and it was a little windy, so now we're able to speak a little bit more without all the distractions, and just wanted to say wonderful job.
Thank you.
The talk on Friday was just so amazing and just so entertaining, and putting in the comedy and just really driving the message home. I really appreciated it. I got chills down my spine actually.
That's true, yeah.
Talking about the birthing process and all that, and what were some highlights of the conference? And
well, for me, because I'm at my booth so much, I got the whole company here, Survival, and our products are here. I barely get to see the talks. So people come out and tell me about other people's talks, and I don't get to see them really. So the highlights for me are really getting to talk to people, and getting to see people on stage and at the booth. It's really cool to get up in front of. I think we had about 1,100 people in seats at this event. So to have the opportunity to address 1,100 people at the same time who are all leaders in the community, or all people who are active in our community, it's a huge responsibility. You get to really affect change. And so I was introducing some ideas this time, like you mentioned, about the birth process, and the idea that for many of us, our birth experience was as traumatic as maybe something like a rape has been for a person who's been through that kind of traumatic experience, or a sudden death, or suicide, like very traumatic to our nervous systems. But I was presenting the idea that the memories of a traumatic experience, like a rape, can be analyzed and worked through, and we can do therapy to get ourselves through to a place of peace around, or at least a place of healing around it. The problem for a lot of us is we were born in hospitals and we don't have memory of it, because we don't start developing memories till later in our childhood, but we have an underlying imprint that we carry with us. Right. And if we were born in a hospital with a lot of blinking lights and a lot of fluorescent lamps and machines that are making noise and people running around and people acting like there's an emergency going on, and maybe we were born through C-section, maybe we were on drugs because our mother was on drugs. Your C-section or something? C-section. Yeah. For me, circumcision on the third day, and when we've had these things happen, there's a trauma. The world is not a safe place, but we can't remember what happened, so we carry with us this sense that there's something unsafe about the world. We can never quite figure out why we feel like that, and I think a lot of what's going on in the world today comes from this traumas that people are carrying with them. I think for me, being separated from my mother after a couple days of starting to feel safe, and being circumcised and then brought back to my mom, develops a deep distrust, like, why, as a child, why would you let this happen to me, kind of a distrust. And so, looking out at the crowd, I saw, wow, it's not just me who feels like that, and people were crying, like, yeah, a lot of us have been through that. Part of that talk was, how do we stop this from happening? I'm not the kind of person who's going to try to stop it from happening by going out and picketing at hospitals. I'm going to get it to stop happening by getting people to stop letting this happen to them when they have babies. And so a big thrust of the talk was, how do we go into the future as community leaders and bring children forth that are healthy and happy and whole.
You mentioned a film that you saw about the birthing process. What was the name of that?
Well, I spent a whole month watching documentaries about birth, and there was a lot of good ones. Two that really impacted me. One was by Ricki Lake, and it'd be great if Ricki saw this at some point. Ricki Lake to me was just this kind of talk show host. I mean, I didn't think of much of her. I certainly didn't really appreciate her show at the time. But she's since, made this documentary called The Business of Being Born. And she earned my respect when I saw her she put herself on camera giving birth at home. And she documented some really powerful things. One of the things she documented, by the way, was that in the 1920s up to the 1960s, there was a phenomenon going on in hospitals in the United States called the twilight sleep. And what was happening was women were being injected with a drug called scopolamine, and also alongside that morphine. But scopolamine is found in some of the nightshade plants, particularly plants like datura. And datura, if you walk in the shamanic plant communities and you talk to shamans, one of the most powerful psychedelic substances in nature comes from the datura plant. The problem with it is it's terrifying. There's many psychoactive plants like ayahuasca that are very blissful experiences. But this plant, Datura, most people who've taken it say it's like being in a nightmare, and sometimes it can last for days. And that you come back with like amnesia and trauma. Well, they were taking the active component, scopolamine, and they were actually injecting it into women while they were giving birth. The woman they would have to tie them down and bind them because the woman would be fighting, kicking, spitting, screaming, tripping on scopolamine, but sedated by the morphine. They would give birth and have no memory of it. And this was done for 40 years in the United States, which means a lot of our mothers were born this way. And they carry with them the birth trauma. Now, I watched another documentary called Birth as We Know It, and this is a very beautiful film about natural birth. And the woman brought forth the idea that when a woman gives birth, that she must, as she gives birth, relive the trauma of her birth experience. And so if she had complications in her own birth, that can come up emotionally, physically, psychologically during her birth, that when she's having birth. And so I was thinking so much about my mother's experience, she coming forth probably under that twilight sleep experience. It's just this cycle of trauma that we've been through, and I think those documentaries are very powerful. I really recommend them. We need to address this, not just how we're born, but also how people are dying today, because people are being born in hospitals and they're dying in hospitals. Both ways are often very, very traumatic, and neither of them showing very much respect for the sacredness of life.